On February 27th, we have a new moon in the sign of Pisces. I'm going to unpack the energy. It's kind of a Pisces pile up with Saturn and Mercury and Neptune and the North Node, along with the sun and the moon in Pisces this month. First, if you enjoy this video, like and subscribe. It helps folks find me. So what's this new moon about? You really get the vibe or the energy of this Pisces new moon by understanding a couple of things. First, it's going to be very different than last month's lunar energy, where we had a new moon in Leo and a full moon in Aquarius. Both of those are masculine signs. One's a fire sign, one's an air sign. They have more to do with sort of an extroverted energy, and ideology, for example, Aquarius energy. Second, if you understand, another reason why the energy is going to be different is because in the past month, all the energy of water signs around emotions was in the background, unconscious to us. And that's because the energy of the water signs was averse to the lunations, meaning the planets in the water signs last month could not see the sun and moon. As a result, you can kind of get this sense of not being connected to our emotions. And then here we are, February 27th, new moon with this pileup of planets in a water sign. And then now the energy of the masculine signs is in the background. So it's kind of a switch, what's in front of us. So what's in front of us is a time maybe to reckon with and turn inward to deal with any difficult emotions that might have come up over the past month. It's been a really rough time for a lot of people in the United States as well as the world, with things sort of falling apart. One of my favorite spiritual teachers is Pema Chodron, and she wrote a book called When Things Fall Apart. It's an excellent resource for this time. She also has a great course called The Noble Heart on Sounds True that I've been listening to a lot as I deal with or try to stay present to what's happening in the world. Anyway, I digress, but I do think it's important to find a way to connect with ourselves when the world itself feels very, very tumultuous. And that's what the new moon offers us, is an opportunity to connect with the deeper part of who we are. That's because the new moon happens in the first 10 degrees of Pisces. And the tarot card associated with that 10 degrees or decan of the sign is the eight. Whoops, that's not the 8 of cups. This is the 8 of cups. I've got it upside down, is the 8 of cups. And so we see at the beginning of Pisces, we see a man, he's got 8 cups behind him. The cups are full. They're offering him possibilities, success in the material world, to be fed by the material world, but he's kind of turning away from material success he's walking toward the mountains, toward higher ground, turning inward to connect with himself. We also see this energy from the fact that in the card, you see that this is an eclipse, an image of an eclipse, the moon covering the sun. The sun represents our conscious attitude, our vision for life. And when we have an eclipse energy, it's kind of like a rebooting. So there's something about the quality of turning inward where, and this card, where when you go inward to connect with source, you tend to leave the material world behind. You don't look to the outer world to feed and sustain you. You find your sustenance from connecting with source, something deeper than yourself. And so we see that in the energy of this full moon or this new moon, suggesting the energy will be there for us to process some of the deep emotions. I talk about deep emotions because in the last 2 lunations, as well as now, the planet Mars and the planet Saturn are both in water signs. Those are the 2 more difficult planets in some ways from our perspective as human beings, because they're called the malefic planets by ancient astrologers. And that's because they can bring some difficult lessons for us. Mars is the god of war, of cutting, of accidents, of aggression. And Saturn is the planet of restrictions and boundaries and what is possible versus what we might fantasize to be possible. So when we experience the energy of these 2 planets, it can feel a little cutting and separating. And So let's talk about first Saturn. He's in Pisces with the sun and moon. Pisces is a very spiritual sign. You can see that just from the card I talked about. It's a water sign ruled by Jupiter. It's feminine. And so it's about, Jupiter's a planet of expansion and optimism and trying to come up with an understanding of the world, like a unitary understanding. And Jupiter rules two signs. He rules Sagittarius and Pisces, but Sagittarius is a masculine sign. And so when Jupiter, the planet of optimism and trying to come up with big ideas, rules that sign, it's about like the sign of the quest for the Holy Grail, to figure out from a mental standpoint how to live in this world, ideologically sometimes. In contrast, Pisces, which is where our energy is now, is a feminine, receptive water sign that has more to do with trying to understand how to navigate the deeper waters of life, how to come up with the unitary answer or receive the answer, listen to the wisdom of the inner source, connect more deeply with something that's bigger than us, turn away from the material world towards something internal. So we've got Saturn there. When Saturn is in Pisces, there can be a little bit of a melancholy, restricted energy around spirituality. So it brings a little bit of a heaviness to that spiritual desire. And then when we put Saturn with Mercury, how we think in our mind, when those two are combined, sometimes it can lead to a little bit of a depressive, heavy quality because Saturn has a leaden quality. And so, or serious thinking, right? I have a connection between Saturn and Mercury in my chart and tend to think about things in a little bit more serious matter. So you can see this new moon might cause us to be more serious. And then when you add in the north node of the moon, which tends to expand any planets it's near, that expands the potential energy of the heaviness. And then we add in Neptune, which can be a planet that has to do with kind of similar to Pisces, can have to do with connecting with something greater than us. But it also, and it can be about dreams, but it can also be about fantasies and illusions. So there's a potential to be a little confused in the midst of all of this. And when Saturn is with Neptune, as he is, that can be a little bit of a despairing quality because it's this sense of structures and what's real being kind of falling apart or being melted because Neptune melts planets that it's near. So that's a lot. That's a lot of kind of heavy energy in that Pisces place. And also that's where the new moon and the sun are, providing us our light, what we can be aware of, where we can direct our attention, what might unfold for us over the course of this new moon, which is a potential to expand our consciousness, but the expansion being around our own internal understanding, not what we see out in the world. Then when you add in the energy of Mars, which is also in a water sign right now, he's in Cancer. Mars doesn't do well in Cancer. Cancer is the sign of the sacred temenos, the walled garden, the home, the family, the place where we create sacred energy for things to thrive and grow. And Mars is the god of war. So you can imagine, I've talked about this in the last couple of videos, when Mars is in Cancer, he's kind of, we don't have as much power around asserting ourselves. Instead, we can end up being kind of irritated. Everybody might be a little irritated right now, especially because Mars has been retrograde over the past month. He's just now turning, he'll be direct at the new moon, but he just turned direct. So he's moving very slowly. It kind of intensifies that energy of irritation a little bit. It's going to take him a while to move off the 17-degree point in the chart. And so, and that energy of Mars in Cancer is trining, meaning it's in a nice, lovely flowing energy. A trine is four houses away, kind of supportive to that new moon. So you get the sense of these planets working together maybe to process some of that difficult emotion. And that's what our opportunity is, right? We always look for what the energy can offer us, where it stops us and where it's inviting us to go. This new moon is inviting us to be present to ourselves, to our emotions, and to let go where it is necessary. One last thing to say about this new moon chart. We have in the background of the chart Chiron, which is our deepest wound, is with Venus, the goddess of love, in the sign of Aries right now. So and I say it's in the background because that energy doesn't have a direct line of sight to the new moon. So if we do go inward, we might try to connect with or understand or become consciously aware of some of the part of us that might feel wounded by what's happening in our personal lives or in the greater world. Again, to see if we can connect with our emotions. Through connecting with our emotions, one of the things Pisces allows us to do is grow and mature and integrate the experience of life. I say that because, again, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. A planet starts in Aries and it moves all the way around the wheel, gathering all the experiences of life, the good and the bad, right? And so there's a maturity that comes with that. The energy where Saturn and Mercury and the North Node and Neptune are in the chart is this third, whoops, I keep holding up the wrong card, is the third decan of Pisces, the very last decan of the zodiac, and that's the 10 of Cups. It's a little complex, but part of the meaning of this card has to do with the integration of those difficult experiences, the maturation and the openness toward life that can come with a mature relation to our emotions. We can see this if you imagine the figures in the card. We have two young children and then we have two adults. It looks like they're parents, but you can also imagine those young children are that the other figures are actually those people are older age. So when we're a child, we're like these little kids, self-contained, right? They're dancing in a circle, not really open or aware of what's happening in the world. But the figures in this card have their arms open to the world, open to the reality of what is. And so there's a spiritual maturity that comes with, if you've ever listened to any, Buddhist teachings or just teachings in general, philosophical teachings, there's a spiritual maturity that comes with accepting the reality, all the ups and downs of life, and being able to maintain an equanimity in the midst of that. And that's part of what growing up is. So there is some opportunity also because Saturn is in this deck, and Saturn can have to do with maturity, to gain some maturity and some wisdom out of whatever experiences are happening to you during this period. So I wish you all the best. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.